Hello, my name is Mohsen Paul Sarfarazi, and we have another one of our programs that in which we have a good member of our soul family who's going to be actually reciting one of the papers that happens to be her favorite paper or one of the papers that she has questions with. And she's going to recite this for you. And the one that she has chosen, actually, allow me to show you what it is. Let's see. Core of my computer. Good God. Actually, no, this is a wrong one. This is a wrong one. Hold on. Okay, the program is actually, I had it on the screen. Let's see if I have it again. It's amazing, it's not showing up in here. Should be showing up. Okay, now we have the share screen, but good God.
Do you want me to tell them, Doctor?
No, we're good, we're good. Okay, here it is. The
Yes.
paper is called The God Source, the Prime Creator, and the Foundation of Divine Creation. And let me just tell you a little bit about these papers. What you could do is that if you go on this blog, you will see this paper. And once you see any papers, on top, you're going to get a menu in here that will give you, it guides you to going to a variety of papers. For example, this particular one, which is on this blog, Spiritual Science 101, if you go to it, and if you look at it, there's a list of other papers. And voila, this is the one that she's going to be reading today. Somebody else might be reading Trinity or whatever. So anyway, it has the list of all the papers, and you can choose whichever you want. Let's say you choose, for example, this paper on the true meaning of evil. And if you go in there you go again. That's the paper for you. So it's very, very easy to navigate. Or if you get to any paper, any of my papers, if you go on Google, if you get to basically, WordPress.com, and once you get in there, you have the same thing on top of all the papers, okay? And then you can go into search anything, paper on creation, on genetics, on energetics, et cetera, et cetera. So that's as far as the WordPress.com is concerned. And then also, I started putting my papers on academia. So if you go to independent.academia.edu/ and my full name, Mohsen Paul Sarfarazi, it will show you all the papers one after another. For example, the last paper that I published yesterday, or late last night, on the common characteristic of the negative aliens. Before that, we had this. And if you go way, 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 way down, you're going to see this God Source paper. But I want to tell you this, the papers on the academia, the list is not complete. It has, a fraction of the papers that I've always published, okay? And so this WordPress.com is, from that point of view, it's better, but some of these files are in JPEG file, and the other ones is PDF. So the PDF files are probably, some people have, prefer to read them. Anyway, here we are, and I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to introduce our soul family member, who is Jewell Johnson. Am I correct?
Yes.
Lynette.
L. Leonette L. Dot. I only use the dot.
Okay. Jewell Leonette. Actually, she just uses L, as you said. Jewell Johnson, and she is an avid soul seeker. She is a dear member of our soul family. And I recall, going back to at least 2013 or 14, I recall that we became Facebook friends, and she's constantly been there. And even for a short time, she took off for whatever reason, but she came back, and she's she's quite seasoned, and in all the materials that we've discussed or we discuss on Facebook. So that's why I asked her to. She volunteered, of course, and then I asked her to chose her to be one of the first ones to read one of the papers. And I will let her introduce herself more. But I want to tell you this, that she is actually chosen this paper, and she tells me because she wants to start from the very beginning. And what is what is more the beginning, if I may say it that way, than the God source. So introduction,
Exactly.
I'm going to give the screen to Jewell, and then after she's finished, she'll be coming back to pose some questions, and we'll be discussing the paper and things that are closely associated with it. And here's Jewell. Thank
Hi,
you.
Professor. Thank you for inviting the Soul Family, our Soul Family, to read your work. And I feel this is important work. This is work that humanity needs to do in order to progress and evolve, as we seem to be behind schedule on doing. It's important work, and I resonate with what Dr. Sarfarazi has written and learned to share with us to get this work done. And I think it's important to read it out loud, and important to have discussions about this work, to understand the science and the spirituality and the beginning of how we came to be. And yes, I'm starting from the beginning because I've been toying with, my life, struggles in my life, trying to get back to this work and understand it more fully and engage with it to the point where we can simply integrate into these new cycles that are happening, whether we're aware of it or not. So better to become aware or more aware than not, I think. And the universe has given us the COVID-19 breakdown to show us that, yeah, it's time to focus on this and focus on what you're doing with your time on this plane. So I'm an artist primarily. I worked as an executive assistant for an ophthalmic device manufacturer here in Los Angeles. But my work is not who I am. My art is more who I am. And being an African-American citizen of this realm at this time, I have many struggles that pretty much keep me from doing what I need to do. But I keep coming back to this spiritual work, and I studied a little of my numerology and astrology, and this is the kind of work that resonates with me. So I need to start focusing on it and pay more attention to what my inner voice is telling me. And this is the work that my inner self is telling me needs to be done. And that's why I'm doing it. So I'm just going to start to read. Are you in agreement with that, Doctor?
Absolutely. I think this is we're not in Kansas anymore. This is a very, very special time that, it's a pre-ascension. It's very, very serious. And we're going back to the God's world. We are actually soon to be, we're becoming, as we were speaking, re-encrypted. What is the core manifestation body is getting re-encrypted, and we're going to be restored to that 12D strand silicate crystalline genetic structure as an Orofim, angelic person, human being as we are. We're very, very special. I don't think people realize how special they are, what they have underneath. I mean, there's been a lot of distortion and damage and genetic mutations and stuff like this, and that is why the Guardian founders, whether the Aurora, whether actually the Emerald Order, all of them are here. The Broad. I don't want to go through all this stuff. I want to give back the screen to
Right.
Jewell.
We'll visit those points as they come up in the discussion, and I will make sure we have plenty of pause to do that when stuff comes up. Certain questions will come up as I read, so we'll go and take some time to get into more detail as we go along. And yes, we're starting at square one so we can go through the whole history of everything you've written. So that's a lot of reading. So let me get started now. Starting with the God source, the prime creator and the foundation of divine creation, Mohsen Paul Sarfarazi, Ph.D., and the abstract begins here. God has been known by many names, but it may best be described as the God source or the prime creator. The object of this essay is to once again introduce God to many who, by virtue of purposeful misinformation and mind-controlling agenda introduced by the negative aliens via many religions on earth, have totally lost touch with their true essence. Indeed, every sentient being is an offspring of an omniscient, omnipotent, consciousness progenitor, who by the virtue of omnipresence exists at all times, what is referred to as the now, within each and every one of us. And at the same time, every sentient and non-sentient being is inevitably a constituent part of this magnificent consciousness being, what is perceived as the cosmos. In this respect, God lives in all, and all exist as the part of this ultimate supreme being. In fact, the concept of separation is an illusion that has seeded in the mind of individuated beings. Thus, everything and every being is conceived within the unified divine mind of God, and our minds are only a minute constituent parts that exist and thrive within this divine matrix of reality. Divine matrix of reality. Ooh. Therefore, all things are inevitably interconnected, quantumly entangled with one another through the source that exists within a highly ordered matrix of reality. Furthermore, the only thing that is ever real is what is conceived as thoughts within the mind of the prime creator. And this prime creator is the omnipotent source that, via the natural process of fractalization, has created us as self-similar individuated beings that, no matter how many times replicated, remain true to the true characteristics of itself. Thus, the metaphysical expression of God, quote, God created us in its own image. What should be remembered that this process of creation through fractalization is akin to looking into a set of parallel mirrors, that no matter how small an image is produced in the mirror, the seemingly infinite replica or images of the original possess the very same details as their creator. This is consistent with the principle of holography, produced via projection and interference of the wave patterns of light that operates with laser accuracy, coherency, and crystallinity, with the essential nature that the generated holograms within holograms, irrespective of scale, all exhibit the very exact details, features, properties, and characteristics. And the exact organization within which God exists and operates is through the principle of Trinity. Everything exists as energy, and the coherent, intelligible energy is what is referred to as consciousness energy, which is inevitably void of any polarity, existing as a point of neutrality. Accordingly, God exists as the conglomerate set of three principles that include number one, neutrality in void or stillness. Number two, the male or father principle. And number three, the female or mother principle. In this respect, the former is the giver of consciousness, the male principle is the transmitter, and the female principle is the receiver. Furthermore, the father principle's activation triggers the advent of mother principle, which in turn exists within the progenitor energy that compromises the point of stillness or void as one. And the father principle is conceived as light, and the mother principle operates as sound frequency. Furthermore, the father is perceived as being electric and the mother as magnetic. Together, they form two constituents that form the electromagnetic energy that is light, with all its spectrum of frequencies that govern the existence of all sentient beings. Furthermore, the whole system creates a form of trinity polarity in the form of combination of neutrality, expansiveness, and contracting energies that form a perpetual open source of energy of creation. This way, everything and every being is eternally supported by the source through a balance of contraction expansion that forms a vibrational form of equilibrium as long as it remains connected to the source, the point of neutrality, via conformance to its true nature. Okay, that's 2 pages in, and then we're going to the introduction section. Doctor, did you want to say anything here?
No, I'm fine as long as you're fine. I'm okay. If you know, there are certain things that you have questions as you read. I do want to mention that the word is holography. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Holography.
holography. Some of these are some new terminologies that people are not used to, so that's fine.
Right.
Nothing.
I pronounce it holography.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Because I'm used to hearing the word hologram, and so it's holography. Got it.
Yeah. Hologram, holography, holograph. You know, but basically hologram and holography. So anyway,
okay.
No, you did a fine job. Then go ahead, and if you don't have a question, I'm fine with it. You know?
No, I just on the scientific basis for the male and female principles, it seems like it's always in the order of male before female, and I always, in my mind, because I guess probably because I'm a woman, I figured that should be the female principle before the male principle, but I could be wrong about that. I'm not a scientist, so I'm just saying that's a question for me. I just would like at some point to discuss it further so I have an understanding of that principle. But yeah, let me continue to read at this point.
Let me just reiterate on this. You brought up a very wonderful actually issue. There's genetic equals, male and female are absolutely genetic equals, but we have been programmed, mind programmed, and our consciousness, our reality has been distorted through the reptilians who believe in male supremacy and in brawn and strength, and they feel they're delusional, and they feel that the women are weak and useless and only good for sex and having children and nonsense like that. And in fact, let me tell you something. Some of them have done away with the females, and they started on cloning and creating drones and things like this, which have got them into trouble. For example,
Yeah.
these grays were attacked by the draconians, in the constellation of Orion and beyond, and all the females were taken. They were captured, they were taken, they were raped, and then they were killed, and they were annihilated.
Wow.
They started on the cloning, and they're in trouble. Okay, so there's a genetic equal, 100%. Whether male comes or female comes, I don't think there's a distinction in there. Male plays a different role, okay, as the role of expansive. See,
Right.
there's God,
Right.
okay, and you expand about God. That's a main action, expansive, and that is actually transmitting the energy, okay?
That makes sense. Yeah.
And without female, you can't come back to God, because that's magnetic, that's female, okay? And it will come to receive energies, because once you go, you expend energy. Then you come back to God to refurbish your energy.
Right. That makes sense. That makes
and you have an equal interval of expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. It's kind of like a pendulum that goes from the middle and swings to one and then swings to the other, or something or your heart beats about a central position. You know what I'm saying? So as you do this, you're fully organic. But the negative, and I don't want to get too much into this, the negative aliens, what they've done, they've distorted this through what's called metatronic reversal system, and they steal magnetic energy from us. That's why it's tilted. You know what I'm saying? Because the magnetic energy.
That's the balance it's out of balance. In other words, it's expansion without contraction, and that's what's causing this sort of like sense of complete kind of stasis, or not actively getting stuff done. You know what I mean? It's stuck or something, or it's just out there. There's no for it to go. Or
actually, if you think about it, just think about it. You expand and you have to contract back all the way. What happens is that you expand, and then since the magnetic energy is stolen, you end up here. There's the 0 point field, which is God. You end up here. Then you go in here, you end up here. Then you go, and then you go here. So basically what's happening is that after many, many cycles of vibration, you lose your position with God. You get further and further and further from God. And that is why we have lost, connection to our inner self, which is the God within us. The higher self is you're higher than you, closer to God, but we're all part of God. Okay, so basically, and let me just tell you one other thing is this right now. It's very close to say that it uses a Fibonacci.
The Fibonacci, yes, the spiral
system that spirals out and out and out and out, instead of a spiral out, come back, spiral out, come back. So that is why Fibonacci is a reversal system, and it's a metatronic reversal, and I will talk about that. And if you want to come back, since you brought this subject, wonderful subject up of the equality. Gender, we're going to be talking a lot about gender. Gender is very important. And let me tell you something, you cannot ascend until you understand the female that's within you and revere that's equal. Now, mostly for men, because the men are have been the oppressors, suppressors, because that's what the negative aliens are. That's what the reptilians are. And they have imposed that on us. But even females, they have to go back in there and appreciate their female, that divine feminine, and equally understand that they have masculinity in there. There is nobody who's fully
It's
female
balance.
or
Exactly.
masculine. We have it. If you are a little bit lopsided on the magnetic side, you become female. And if you are more prone to, electrical, electricity or electric field or expansive field or male, you become male.
Right,
And
right.
by the way, you have a twin that lives in a. I don't want to get too much into this, into the conjugate mirrored space time. And if you're, let's say, you're 55-45, that one is 45-55. That's why you come together. All your energies have to go back to neutrality. Then you're in God. You're in the neutral network of God, which the metaphysics is referred to as 0-point field.
Wow. I'm glad I asked that question. Thank you for answering it. I know we're going to get more into that. Okay, so I'll continue to read.
Very good.
Introduction. Everything in the cosmos and in our reality occurs as a consequence of energy. More specifically, it's coherent or intelligent energy that gives rise to the perception of everything. And crystalline, coherent, intelligible energy is what we refer to as consciousness. And it says 1 and 2 in brackets. 1 to 2.
Those are references. Those are references at the end of the paper.
Reference at the bottom. Okay, great. Thank you. So everything that we perceive around us, including the very nature of our own existence, is the result of energy of consciousness. Unfortunately, mainstream science subscribes to the misconception that consciousness is formed by the brain or its function, and it ceases to exist at physical death of the brain. This misconception simply illustrates that the contemporary science remains ignorant to the true knowledge of morphogenic fields, MF in parentheses, in caps, and the structure of multidimensional reality, source 3 to 4 reference. Ultimately, consciousness is everything. And consciousness is an internal phenomenon in which all manifestations transpire outside from within. In other words, all co-creations occur external to the point of consciousness. Similarly, the God source expresses itself with manifestations that occur internal and not external to itself. Wow. All creation transpires from within the God source, and God's source resides within all creation. As all creation takes place within the consciousness of God, the concept of separation from God is only an illusion that only occurs as a result of highly limited perception of individuals who have lost touch with the God source or have become an amnesiac with respect to their original source of consciousness. Source for that is 5. Concept of time, space, 6-9, including the fabric of I should probably just read this without the sources. So the concepts of space and time, including the fabric of space-time, matter-antimatter, are the byproduct of consciousness. They serve to facilitate the categorization of things and events in our consciousness. Strictly speaking, reality is a software program that is projected onto space and time, or collectively space-time, that forms the basis of our understanding or sensing of everything and every event that transpires. In this respect, the cosmos is divided into a series of discrete space-times that are referred to as dimensions. At the same time, the cosmos epitomizes a gigantic computer that projects the software programs of reality onto its discrete sets of space-times that are arranged in the forms of discrete subroutines. And behind it all is the energetic essence, the quanta of energies that interact with one another to make everything possible and give rise to all possible scenarios that we perceive as reality within our consciousness. Thus, ultimately, the cosmos constitutes the body of a magnificent, omniscient, omnipotent, prime creator that has omnipresence in what we call as space everywhere and exists in this perpetual, eternal, in the perpetual, eternal moments of time that is referred to as the absolute now moment. And what is more, everything that exists and everything that occurs is the end result of the perception of what transpires in the unified mind of our prime creator. In this respect, we can envision the prime creator as to have a heart brain that serves as a central controlling point for all that transpires, what we refer to as the source. And the source resides at the center or heart of the body of the prime creator that we refer to as the cosmos. Thus, everything that occurs is the end result of the crystalline, coherent, intelligent energies that form the consciousness of the prime creator. In this respect, it is through perpetual process of divine thoughts of the prime creator that the conceptions of space, time, and movement comes into our reality as minute constituent parts or minute constituent parts of our prime creator. Thus, more fundamentally, it is the interaction of these coherent, intelligent energies with one another that give rise to the perfect crystalline form of thoughts of highest order in the divine mind of our prime creator. So it's alignment. The God source is everything. God has been known by many different names. A description of the entirety of such names is not the objective of this essay. Suffice it to say that pertinent to this discussion, God is referred to as the prime creator, the source, God mind, the heart mind of God, the eternal force, oneness, etc. In the tradition of the writings of the author, this omnipotent force shall be referred to as the prime creator or the source. The prime creator epitomizes an entity or identity with an immeasurable gestalt of energy of consciousness with infinite cognitive ability or omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. The prime creator may be perceived as an entity with pure consciousness, an infinitely creative force that is not just sentient, but exists beyond the confines of space, time, and constitution. God is a universal unified field expressed in the form of conscious energy through which consciousness can perceive and manifest itself. This occurs as a result of transforming or downstepping of consciousness to create sentient beings. In the manifestation process of downstepping creation and consciousness, the entire primal substance of the cosmos itself is a conscious living manifestation of the omnipresent identity of God's source, expressed in the form of energetic thought constructions. Thus, all things manifest are living expressions of the identity of God. It should be spiritually appreciated that God is not a far distant male controlling creator. That is the image imposed by the negative aliens, Anunnaki, etc., who as imposters have declared themselves as gods. They are also the same aliens who have introduced misogyny as a principle or form of belief in human culture. And in the eyes of God, both male and female are equal. Furthermore, God is neither judgmental nor suppressive. It requires no worship of itself. Prayer is our choice and privilege. The most characteristic feature of God principle is that it is loving and compassionate. And as human beings and offspring of God, we are created with the same motto of unconditional love, compassion, and empathy. We are to love, cherish, and support every living thing that is construed as a constituent part of the whole, foremost ourselves. And we are to subscribe to a unified field of consciousness from which our consciousness, let me read that again. And we are to subscribe to a unified field of consciousness from which our consciousness emerges. Therefore, the concept of separation from self, all sentient siblings, and indeed all living things that constitute the very God source, the prime creator, is futile. We are designed to be empathetic, compassionate, and loving, and engage in service to all instead of being so self-centered and selfish. In this respect, vanity, narcissism, and all that attracts attention to self or questions of form is repugnant. And these principles are reflected in the law of one that epitomizes the model of existence and mission for the prime creator, God source, and all its offspring who remain connected to it. The law of one represents the only true religion asserting that the law of one represents the only one true religion asserting that only one unified mind or consciousness field exists that is referred to as the mind of God, and that all things and beings are interconnected as they exist and are the constituent parts of the one. The law of one inspires compassion, empathy, unconditional love, and service to others, as opposed to selfishness, exerting power and conquest, and only self-interests, and subjugating the so-called weak to oppression, suppression, having the taking no prisoners attitude, and apathy and service to self only. There is a living field of specifically ordered energy through which the central God source expresses its consciousness in the form of manifestation through all sentient beings and everything that exists. Thus, God is a living, omnipresent spirit that perpetually manifests itself as it moves through all things at all times. In fact, creation itself is continually and perpetually occurring. God expresses itself simultaneously as spiritual reality of consciousness. God expresses itself simultaneously as spiritual reality of consciousness, and the true nature and the true natural laws and the eternal dynamics of energetic, creational physics, mechanics are reflections of its manifestation. The scientific downstepping of consciousness and the nature of transformational creation imply that the Spirit of God resides within the exterior and interior worlds as both manifest and non-manifest forms, and expresses itself through all sentient beings, including the human beings. It also suggests that the worlds of external perception and finite beings are not the real reality, but rather thought form constructs that appear to be real to all sentient beings as individuated portions of God's eternal consciousness. And as the worlds that are perceived represent a holographic playground within the creative mind of the God source, which is the only real reality through which God as the living consciousness expresses itself through self-exploration as infinite forms of creation. Therefore, God is all things. Through demonstrating the spiritual and scientific union of all things, the stepwise aspect of creational model also suggests that everyone and everything exists within the oneness of creation. And in this respect, things and beings that appear to be evil and ungodly are the portions of God expression that have fully forgotten the true nature of their identity and existence within the oneness of all that is God. Thus, the concept of reality itself emerges from and exists within the core of creation that is commonly referred to as spirit, source, God, God source, prime creator, etc. Furthermore, such a central source of creation is the point of return, or the central point of union for the all that epitomizes the eternal consciousness of the all, which is singular and one. This central creative source is that sentient, intelligent, coherent entity possessing precise crystalline form of consciousness energy through which the cosmos and all that resides within its domain is defined. What is more, that in the process of perpetual evolution, particularly in relation to human consciousness, the intended path held within the seed of consciousness is co-creatorship with the God source. And eventually, as a result of the reintegration of all consciousness identities, there follows the return to oneness. The God seed. Human consciousness foremost individuates within the God source in the form of God seed, an eternal electrotonal gestalt of consciousness composed of pure conscious radiation, which exists within the unified field of source consciousness. God seeds arise as a result of God creating within itself smaller paradigms of consciousness that reflect its structures and characteristics. The God seed, therefore, represents the source family of Gestalt consciousness within which the levels of individuated identity arises. And the primal God seeds are those that hold the full energy of the original pulse of consciousness. The creator creates many God seeds within the structure of cosmic order. These God seeds represent the first level of individuation from source. The cosmic seed atom is the living sentient consciousness field formed by the intermingling of the divine Trinity God forces, which emerges as an elliptical sphere standing wave body within the source, the center point of the cosmic crystalline template. The seed atom allows the unified Holy Spirit God force to emerge with the eternal internal flame of God consciousness, and opens a two-way communication between the God source and the manifestation fields within it. The cosmic seed atom denotes the center point of central creation. Fueled eternal by God's source via the eternal internal flame at its center, the cosmic atom perpetually creates replicas of itself to serve as the living seed and divine blueprint form within which time matrices, universes, and matter and antimatter systems are naturally and perpetually created. Creation of the God seed of consciousness Gestalt is only the first step in the stepwise creation. In relation to the structure of our cosmic order, there are 24, 2 sets of 12, primary God seed collectives within our manifest universes. These are identities that exist in the state of perpetual oneness with the mind of God. Each step down in level of consciousness, manifestation, individuation occurs in sets of 12 by the process of exponential fractalization. The monad, the tree of life, the DNA are all based on a pattern of 12. Thus, God's creation is founded upon a base 12 mathematics. In this respect, everything operates as a set of 12, which includes existence of 12 dimensions within physicality and 2 sets of 12 primary God seed collectives as oversouls, each dividing themselves as a set of 12 souls, who in turn each divides itself into 12 soul aspects or personalities existing within the myriad of harmonic universes and their twin antiphase parallels in our universe. Similar example includes humans possessing 12 DNA strands, main chakras to interface with such 12 dimensions, etc. In fact, the natural base arithmetic is comprised of base 12 numbers as originally existed at the time of Atlantis. This is before our natural 12-strand DNA genetics was violated to conform to the negative aliens base 10-strand DNA genetics, when the base 10 decimal numbers was adopted as the basis for our mathematics or arithmetic. The creation of the God seed of Gestalt consciousness is only the primary step in a series of stepwise creational process in which the electrical currents of consciousness are progressively stepped down or transformed. All of these collectively form what we refer to as the cosmic consciousness of consciousness mind, or the cosmic mind matrix, alternately called the cosmic logos. It represents an eternal gestalt of identity that is non-dimensionalized and exists beyond, bless you, the space-time and matter, antimatter classification. It represents a level of mind that exists as part of the unified field, the one mind or the source mind of the core creative force that represents the mind of prime creator. All other levels of identity and consciousness within the structures of all dimensional systems exist within the crystalline latticework genetic, let me say that again, crystalline latticework morphogenetic blueprint of this Gestalt identity. Through this unified field or cosmic mind matrix, all things, beings, and consciousness are connected to and contained within the central creative Gestalt identity of the source mind. Our God seed is one of the primal God seeds that holds the full energy of the original pulse of consciousness. It represents the 12th position in its set of 12 God seeds. It contains within it the codes of all of the others in its set. These codes are the light and sound template patterns that allow for expression of consciousness to form. It is therefore capable of resetting the pattern of any of those other God seeds should there be any problems in the step down levels of the family line. Our God seed is one of the God seeds that has held the integrity of its family lines intact. Accordingly, the representatives of this line exist on the cosmic and other levels of being. All humans are connected to this God seed. The human lineage is directly descended from this God seed and originated to address the problem of monadic reversal. Monadic reversal occurs when consciousness and its energy gets disconnected from its monadic level of being. You can think of the monad as the aspect of source and ourselves that sets the pattern out of which every aspect of our reality is made. When we talk about monad, we are inevitably referring to the seed atom. Thus, the concept of monad and seed atom are deeply connected, essentially describing the different aspects of the same thing. This identity is called the seed of consciousness. The seed of consciousness represents the original point of origin, the spark of God, the permanent seed atom. This seed relates to the origin of all manifestations and incarnations. This seed retains its original integrity of design in all ways. Once it reaches individuation, it enters the time matrix upon an energetic projection, which we would call a stream of consciousness. The clear-cut path of evolution is then a simple case of rebuilding the original fire letter scalar wave design of the original seed of consciousness and of the stream of consciousness. Every sentient being has a unique identity and individuation which lies outside of all space-time dimensions. Wow. Fragmentation through fractalization. The most striking feature of this omnipotent force we refer to as the God source or prime creator is that it is capable of perpetually expanding in consciousness via the process of fractalization by dividing itself into self-similar forms. And the underlying characteristic of such self-similar fractalization is that no matter how many times the consciousness is stepped down into similar patterns of expanding, evolving symmetry at increasing smaller scales, the replication remains to be exactly the same as at every scale, entailing a detailed pattern that repeats itself. In other words, the natural feature of this self-similarity is such that if you were to zoom in as to create digital images, such as holographic images, to uncover perhaps new, finer, previously invisible structure, you will find that no such new details appear. This is akin to the 12D morphogenetic structure of every human that is composed of the very same 12 strands of DNA, although traditionally 10 of which have been suppressed from activation due to a natural mutual unplugging. In other words, nothing is different and the same pattern repeats over and over. It is akin to looking in order to find infinite regress in parallel mirrors. Furthermore, the nature of this self-similar fractalization, the nature of this self-similar fractalization is such that it is not just limited to geometric patterns. It can also describe processes in time, as well as in holographic images and sound frequency structure, the two components of sound frequency and light spectrum that are involved in creation. The entire process of creation occurs as a result of downstepping of consciousness into smaller units of consciousness comprised of sentient beings through which the God source can express and experience itself. In mathematics, a fractal is an abstract object used to describe naturally occurring objects. Fractals also exhibit the same geometric structures and natural characteristics at different scales. Fractals have a detailed pattern that repeats itself. Fractals are different from other geometric figures because of the way in which they scale. The spatial content of the fractal scales by a power that is not necessary to integer. The spatial content of the fractal scales by a power that is not necessarily an integer. This power is called the fractal dimension. Also, mathematically, fractals are usually not differential. I can't say that word. Differentiable. Also, mathematically, say it again for me.
Differentiable.
God, so thank you. I know I was putting, it felt like I put too many syllables in there. Yeah, differentiable. Got it?
To differentiate, like differentiate.
Right. I know, but I've never seen it. I know differentiate the word, but I've never seen it differentiable. Okay, but now I have. Okay. Also, mathematically, fractals are not all, let me just start it again. Also, mathematically, fractals are usually not differentiable. Fractals are infinitely self-similar, detailed mathematical constructs having fractal dimensions, of which many examples have been formulated and studied in great depth. In fractals, the pattern that is reproduced is highly detailed. This idea of being detailed relates to another feature that can be understood without mathematical background. Simply, it refers to how a fractal scales compared to how geometric shapes are usually perceived. As it may be seen in the case of a snowflake, when the fractal curve is divided into parts, 1/3 the length of the original line becomes 4 pieces rearranged to repeat the original detail. And this unusual relationship is the basis of its fractal dimension. And fractal dimensions are never integer numbers. This also leads to understanding the third feature of fractals, namely that their mathematical equations are never differentiable. In a concrete sense, this means fractals cannot be measured in traditional ways. And the mainstream science has now come to the realization that fractalization is a process that drives crystalline states in a spin system. This is consistent with the fact that all that the God source creates is inevitably set in rotational motion about its heart mind that is in fact referred to as the source. Furthermore, consciousness energetic structure is crystalline that manifests itself as something that is precise, coherent, intelligible, and creational. And the God source sets creation in motion through perpetually engaging part of its consciousness in the form of vibrational downstepping through which the cosmic eternal light creation is formed. The phenomenon of Trinity. The primal force, electrocrystalline currents, are the forms that consciousness takes on in order to come into manifestation. These forces are made up of fundamental units of divine consciousness energy that cycle in a specific way through all the levels of the anatomy in the transduction sequence according to their morphogenetic code. They are the fabric of the unified field and the substance of the scalar waves that form the templates upon which matter, antimatter, and consciousness manifest. The living expression of God source identity as eternal life force is composed of tripolar positive, negative, neutral charge energetic units. The living expression of God's source identity as eternal life force is composed of tripolar, positive, negative, neutral charge energetic units. This is polarity system that is distinct from regular bidirectional polar electric form that we are accustomed to within the context of electricity. It is akin to a crystalline form that is, strictly speaking, polar, that is not bipolar in our conventional sense. It operates under the principle of building a potential gradient whose settlement induces flow of current, yet does not operate based upon the usual form of pure electricity or magnetism. It is something that it occurs within plasma systems that operate based upon the principle of quasi-free flow as opposed to full congealment, that induces a potential gradient as a result of local heterogeneous accumulation of ionic charges, particularly produced via a compressive pinch within the crystalline system of the fabric of time or fabric of space-time that is referred to as a piezoelectricity. Did I say that correctly, piezo?
Yeah, piezoelectricity.
Piezo, I've heard of it, and I really wish they started us with science in grade school, you know?
It's just when you get a crystal, if you get a crystal and you compress it,
yes,
there is an electric current released in it. Okay.
okay.
So if you pressure, and then in the cosmos, there's a lot of such compression of the plasmic layers occur. Okay. So
wow.
that gives you the crystallinity. Actually, what's happening to you right now, all these pressures that you have through ascension symptoms,
Yeah.
pains, the suffering that you have, it'll crystallizes you.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, does that have anything to do with how diamonds are created as well from carbon, charcoal structure kind of thing?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that it's a crystalline form of an amorphous system. An amorphous system is disordered. A crystalline is very ordered. So you have all these quanta of energy, or you have these particles sitting in a very regular fashion. They're very ordered. Okay. So now what's happening to you, as I said, this is very interesting actually, that we are having so much pressure you have in your spinal cord, in your bone structure.
Yeah, my joints,
right?
my joints. Yeah.
Yeah, have you not felt it?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Some of
It's
that,
exhausting.
and human beings cannot live without this very low current electricity.
Yes.
Runs
Yes.
through us. We are electromagnetic beings, and everything that functions through us is through biochemical, a bioelectric system. It's a bioelectrochemical system.
Bioelectric.
It's alive, it has chemistry because it has ions and things like this. You know what I'm saying? Positive, negative, electrons, protons, all this stuff. And then you're talking about electricity. And what electricity is actually is that if you have accumulation of electrons in one part of space or a system, it has a natural tendency to relieve this potential that he has created. Because if you have more electrons than here, you have positivity here, negativity here, you have a polarity, just like a battery. So the electricity wants to flow from where the electrons are too much, too many. They are trying to go to the positive thing to equalize. You know what I'm saying?
Balance.
So it's to do with that. But anyway, now going back to this is that this pressure creates this piezoelectric effect. You know what I'm saying? Which goes along. So it creates that currents that you need in your body, okay? But in a piezoelectric fashion, in a crystalline fashion, which means your system, which is totally amorphous. Carbon becomes silicate. The carbon that's so amorphous, it becomes silicate. Silicate is a much more ordered state. Okay, and it has higher frequency, higher dimensional frequency.
So it creates a pressure that it becomes transformative. It just becomes a completely different aspect of that. So in other words,
it's a process of evolution. We are actually, what we're doing, we're cocooning right now. But the point is on the surface, you know, like a butterfly, you see when it cocoons, you have all this goo stuff outside and you see it's cocooning. To us, the only way we can understand it is all this pain, it's all energetic, it's all etheric. Except that now you see, for example, people have been reporting this to me, a lot of people that, you know, they're getting all this black goo coming out of their eyes, their mouth, and all this stuff. Those are the impurities.
Okay.
On the DNA system that made it, the whole system, you know what I'm saying? Not you know?
So also that the 10 strands being that we're actually not using of our DNA, right? That's becoming.
Those are there. Those 10 strands are there. They call them junk genes. Okay.
Junk genes, exactly.
Yeah. The negative aliens programmed us through AI technology. Okay, that these become dormant.
Right.
Frequency fences, so they can never activate. So if they never activate, as if they don't exist, but they are there.
They're there.
And the geneticists and the biologists, scientists, for a long time, they didn't know what was going on. So they said, this is all, remnants of the old revolutionary process, and nonsense like that. So, but it is there. It hasn't gone anywhere. It is dormant. It's sort of like, look at you were talking about, look at your diamond ring. You know what I'm saying? You look at it, doesn't look good. You
clean it.
Yes, you clean it. You get rid of all the glue stuff on it, and the crystallinity comes out, and the shine, the light comes out. And this is what's been happening. Our light has been dimmed. We're all light beings. You know what I'm saying? And we should really radiate light, but it's been dimmed down, dampened down. Our vibration has been damped out, because vibration should have got this like this. Now it's damped out. When it's damped out, it's just like, it goes like this. The more damping, it goes like this. You know what I'm saying? That's what damping means.
Dampening, making it lesser than that it's capable of being, and that's like a veil being placed, and the black goo is coming out to remove the veil from,
Right.
so you can access that energy and complete the transformation. It's fascinating. It's just completely real.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna keep reading.
Okay.
The author has spoken of this phenomenon, classifying the concept under the category of electrocrystalline flow of current within the fabric of space-time. It is akin to something that does not occur as a result of bipolarity due to the flow of the negative charged electrons between two poles, which describe conventional electricity. And the beauty of this type of current flow produced as a result of so-called tripolarity is that it gives rise to the advent of an open energetic system that is perpetual, as opposed to one generated due to bipolarity that epitomizes a closed energetic system induced by the back and forth flow between 2 points, which is limited in nature, consumptive, not like.
I'm sorry.
And they're using all that. They're using all that energy that we're enclosed and not using. They're using it. That's what they
the word was self-consumed there.
Consumptive.
Oh, consumptive. The same thing. Self can consume. It's like parasitically, feeding on it, and it's consuming it.
It feels, and I can sometimes get that very clear sense of something is feeding from it, from that.
Yeah, definitely.
And such is the nature of Trinity energetic wave generation and flow, which is the underlying characteristic of the divine energies. Simply, it has three distinct components of energy that may be referred to as masculine or father principle, and feminine, the mother principle, and the neutral may be perceived as being analogous to the womb that is not yet manifested as any form, gender, or identity. In this latter is the end result of two polar constituents, male and female, that represent the void, the stillness, and point of pure, eternal, divine energy, also referred to as the free energy. Alternatively, the latter is akin to the offspring principle, son or daughter, that in the context of energetic light waves, the proper medium for dissemination of consciousness can be described as the sun, not sun, meaning S-U-N and not S-O-N principle. That makes sense. In this respect, the God source splits itself into three principal identities: the father, the mother, and the son or daughter offspring principles. Furthermore, by the very virtue of the fact that the offspring can split itself into a father principle, son, and mother principle, daughter, it is clear that the cycle of energetic flow epitomizes an eternally open system that can go on and on forever, perpetually replicating itself into smaller and smaller units by the process of fractalization, with each having the potential for evolution and consciousness expansion. In this respect, the fundamental characteristics of this fractalization process is that it has the property of self-similarity. It means that no matter how many times the process is repeated or replicated into smaller and smaller units of consciousness carrying constituents, the detail of the geometric pattern as well as the characteristics of the offspring remains the same as the original progenitor. And thus, the metaphysical expression of God created man in its own image. Furthermore, clearly this procedure of replication represents a holographic process in which a scheme of hologram within hologram is produced. It is akin to placing the progenitor between two parallel mirrors that represent the mother and father principles and looking at the images that are produced as reflections of the original. It may be best to describe the that by this process of progressive downstepping of the original consciousness energetic units, each image gradually becomes smaller and smaller, yet all contain the exact details as the original. This is this is consistent with the very characteristic of a hologram that no matter how and how much it is divided or split into different constituents, each part has the very same geometric shape, pattern, as well as the characteristic of the whole. Thus, the expected paradigm of consciousness or reality manifestation is perceived to be holographic in nature, very much in line with the way the information in a laser light may be filtered by its projection on the given screen, a 2D space-time, and then the information recorded onto the film screen, 2D space-time, are reprojected to form an interference pattern, that gives the illusion of three-dimensionality. Wow. The neutral principle is something that should be known as the Holy Spirit. From within this unified neutral expression of the God source, two smaller polarized divine masculine and divine feminine God life force expressions simultaneously emerge. Together, these first three expressions of the God source represent the God life force that creates the true divine trinity of cosmic creation. But the neutral, divine masculine and divine feminine God life forces are not external to the creator God, nor these constitute three different levels. Let me try that again.
Take a break.
I don't know why this sentence is so simple and I can't read it. Okay. Nor these constitute three different or individual gods. In other words, it doesn't break God up. It's one. It's still one.
They don't constitute.
Nor these constitute
three different gods. They're one God.
Okay. So three. Okay. Nor do these constitute three different or individual gods. Okay, got it. Furthermore, nothing is demanded of you to engage in the worship of the creator God source. Prayer is an individual choice or privilege. The three aspects of the creator God source represent the first three levels of living prime consciousness. These collectively form the consciousness, sentience, intelligence, existing within the God source, expressing its life force energy. All energy, consciousness, and manifestation emerge within and are composed of the life force energies of the God force trinity. Separation from God source is only an illusion we can create for ourselves while within the individuated manifestation. It is a reflection of the fact we have forgotten the omnipotence of God's creational power and the omnipresent nature of its existence as ever present everywhere, ultimately vibrating with infinite natural frequency and 100% light quotient as the God force divine trinity. To summarize, the God source creates the first downstepping of consciousness that creates within itself three constituent parts. Number one, the void or eternal still point, epitomizing point of everlasting consciousness energy that represents neutrality. Number two, the divine Father creational spark that is an expanding energy force that represents the process of transmitting. Number three, the divine mother creational seed that is a contracting energy force that epitomizes that act of receiving. There exists the cosmic shield of Holy Spirit consciousness that serves as the cosmic still point of creation. It holds within itself the smaller cosmic templates of divine masculine and divine feminine consciousness. These are called the polarity shields, through which sets of negative electrical charge representing their counterclockwise rotation about the source create the matter, space-time universes, and positive electrical charge epitomizing their clockwise rotation about the source form the antimatter, space-time, or anti-phase parallel universes. These universes and their parallels via a Merkabah circulatory system perpetually circulate into and out of manifestation through the cosmic shield and their inherent coded design. The Holy Spirit, eternal flame, the Holy Spirit, eternal internal flame is not just a spiritual concept that demands engaging in an imaginary belief or faith system. It is quite a tangible, quantifiable, standing wave of living, neutral God force consciousness energy that expresses itself in the form of a standing wave of energy radiation. It is said that in the beginning there was only the void, the still point of neutrality. Then within this void, God abstracted, spoke of the phenomenon of divine masculine that epitomizes the concept of light. So that's expansion. Then from the phenomenon of divine masculine came the phenomenon of divine feminine that represents the concept of sound frequency. Thus, the biblical metaphoric account of creating Eve from the rib of Adam. And finally, from the light came all creation. These three form the basis of Holy Trinity in the cosmos. And each level or phenomenon progressively contains the successive phenomenon abstracted. Thus, the void or neutrality contains the divine masculine that in turn contains the divine feminine. In terms of different sound syllabi, collectively epitomizing the entirety of the God source, these include ek, void of neutrality, or is that ek, EC, or etch? No. And then, or ek, EK, or so it's EC, void of neutrality, EK, divine masculine or father, and Sha, SHA, divine feminine or mother, collectively forming Akasha, which is fascinating.
Akasha, yeah.
Which is that related to Akashic, like the Akashic record?
No. This is Akasha.
That's okay. Akasha.
These are some of the terminologies of the ancient. They didn't come from me. They came from. It's from what you call a Kelantic science.
Okay, Kelantic, right? The Kelantic science.
So I never use the terminology. I never use the expressions, but here I thought it was interesting because.
But this is the sound syllabi that's related to creation, right?
Right. And it's a different way of, terminology and vernacular and all this stuff. But I just wanted to bring it together because people have seen Akasha and stuff like that in metaphysics and things like that. So.
Okay. So we'll talk about Kelantic science and how that figures in at some point, but not right now. Let me finish this right now. I'm almost done. Thus, the void or neutrality, ek, is the divine creational womb that epitomizes the God spirit or the divine source, while light represents the God spark, which is the divine masculine or father, and sound frequency represents the God seed, which is the divine feminine or mother. The principle of creation. As far as the process of creation in time is concerned, its underlying feature is the principle of dual existence that asserts everything is created in dual or conjugate forms. More specifically, time creates the concept of dimensions, and it is such that conjugate or mirrored time spaces are created simultaneously. In this respect, one gives rise to spatial expansion away and the other spatial contraction towards the source. It should be clarified therein that when one speaks of expansion, contraction, two opposing scenarios come to mind. First of all, if we are concerned with the energetics of consciousness, which should be the primary concern in the context of our discussion, expansion of consciousness is achieved and accentuated when one approaches the source. And of course, the opposite is true if one considers energetic contraction. Namely, contraction or diminishing of energy of consciousness is synonymous with moving away from the source. On the contrary, if we are concerned with spatial expansion or contraction, rotational spinning counterclockwise about the source is akin to expanding away from the source, which is actually commensurate with diminishing or contracting the frequency light quotient of consciousness energy. And of course, rotational spinning clockwise about the source is akin to contracting towards the source, which is actually synonymous with increasing or expanding the frequency light quotient of consciousness energy. This is the primary reason why the author introduced the concept of propinquity, which signifies the degree of closeness to the source. Simply being closer to the source, being innermost to the center of cosmos or the source, is equivalent to having higher propinquity or frequency light quotient of consciousness energy. Thus, care must be taken when we speak of contraction expansion, as it has an exact opposite meaning, when it is used in the context of spatial distance, reflected through propinquity, versus energy of consciousness. In other words, the closer the distance from the center of cosmos, the higher the propinquity, the higher is the state of consciousness, which is synonymous with contraction with respect to the spatial distance. And at the same time, it connotates expansion in terms of consciousness, energy, or vice versa. In any case, the perpetual external expansion in the process of creation is balanced by the internal reciprocal action of contraction, effectively giving rise to neutrality or the great void, which marks the eternal stillness. This is what refers everything back to the source as the fountain of open source energy and the provider of support for all things. Thus, the source as the eternal force contains within itself a balance between expansion and contraction, stillness and motion, space-time and the void, magnetic repulsion zones, darkness and light, within which creation takes place. Through this state, the cosmos is maintained in a state of eternal balance, perpetual stillness and motion, and never-ending creation. Thus, the vibrational nature of creation is manifested through simultaneous electrical expanding currents and magnetic contracting currents of creation that act as opposition to other, ensuring the overall balance of these opposing currents within the cosmos. In this respect, there should be no concern regarding the running away of this or any other universes and their expansion to the point of oblivion, as the expansion of the universe is simultaneously deflected by an internal contraction of the universe. Mechanically, this is analogous to the concept of Coriolis effect that the author has spoken of before. This is akin to moving on a rotational platform or frame of reference in which the moving object has the tendency to be sideswept or thrown off its intended path by the Coriolis force. And the nature of such force is that if the platform rotates clockwise, there is an inclination for the object to be thrown toward the center of rotation. I need to read that again. And the nature of such is force is that if the platform rotates clockwise, there is an inclination for the object to be thrown towards the rotation. Alternatively, if the platform rotates counterclockwise, there is a tendency for the object to be thrown outward from the center of rotation. Furthermore, these magnitudes of such a force or acceleration is such that the Coriolis force decreases as the object resides closer to the center of rotation and vice versa. Similarly, the nature of existence is such that everything inevitably rotationally spins about the force. From the knowledge of simple mechanics, we know that the very act of rotating about a central point in a circular path creates centrifugal forces, have the tendency to deflect the moving object from its path. And nature has provided for this discrepancy via the advent of centripetal force that is equal and opposite in direction to the said centrifugal force, thus balancing the system, resulting in a moving object being able to stay on its rotational circular path. More specifically, the concept of space-time dimensionality, this is synonymous with the concept of conjugate mirrored space-times introduced by the author before. And more directly, this is something that is more generally triggered by the dual nature or requisite of creation that the author has spoken of previously. Simply, creation occurs in the form of two opposing yet interrelated phenomena that serve to keep one another at bay, effectuating balance within the cosmos, be it energetically, polar, gender-wise, current-wise, force-related, etc. Wow. And in the context of our discussion, it is achieved as a result of the prime creator forming three aspects of itself that may be collectively referred to as Trinity. Balance is everything. Okay, so and then we have all the references from other papers, which we're also going to dig into at some point. That is it, Professor. Wow.
That's wonderful. If if you want to understand creation, you have to understand what I've introduced as the dualism principle of creation.
Yes.
Which means nothing could be created that exists. Any events, anything cannot exist by itself. It always is formed in a conjugate manner as a pair. Okay.
As a conjugate, there has to be a relation. There's not this. It's like they say, no man is an island. You can't do anything. You can get to a certain point by yourself, but then at some point you're going to need community and relation to go further.
Yeah, that's one thing. But what I'm talking about is that everything that's created in the cosmos is created in a conjugate mirrored way. What it means is that it has a pair.
Yes.
And it is like there is a mirror in the middle, and there is another form of that, which is really the opposite form of it, on the other side of the mirror. Now, on the other side of the mirror is really the same as you, but when you look from one side, it appears as opposite. Okay. So, right. For example, if you start rotating and looking at the picture of that in the mirror, okay, on the other side, if you look at it, if you're going counterclockwise, it looks like it's going clockwise.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? This is actually the principle of matter, antimatter, okay, which is matter basically means that the quantum of energy is spinning counterclockwise, and matter, antimatter is clockwise. And matter cannot exist without antimatter. But they exist. Okay, the act of spinning is what gives you time. And what it is that time can only exist in a bidirectional manner. But it's like a bivector pointing in two opposite directions, which are, totally 180 degrees apart, okay? Opposite of each other. However, there's a wall in time in the middle, creating two dimensions. So you have your physical and ethereal aspect. Okay? It's the same thing as having twin self. You have a twin self. There's there's a twin aspect of you sitting exactly where you're sitting as a male. Okay?
But that twin aspect of myself is sitting in another dimension, opposed to where
it's sitting in the same space.
In the same space.
But different time. So for you, time progresses this way. For that one, time progresses the other way. So what it is because you never meet. You never meet. Since you never meet, you don't even know that they exist. It's stealth.
Right, exactly. You never know, except for we can speculate endlessly, but I'll never meet that opposing self of mine. Right. I'll never meet the opposing male aspect. It's sitting right here.
Yeah, and on top of that, I introduced the concept of sentient vibration or quantum consciousness, which means you jump between matter and antimatter, matter and antimatter. And you don't even know it because it happens at like 0.000000, 43 zeros. So it's 10 to the minus 43 to the power minus 43 seconds. So you go.
Never. Yeah. It's so.
You exist. You have you have a multiple life. You live multiple lives. And what's interesting is that is only one aspect of you. There are 12 of you around. Remember, we're talking about 144. The 12 makes 12.
Yes.
12 of those, and the way they're rotating at an axis that's a little offset. If you go around the sphere, you can rotate about different axes. So you can have different time axes. All this actually gives you the Merkaba mechanics, which is your flight mechanics.
Wow. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the Merkaba.
There's two aspects.
Like a rotating, kind of a geometric rotation.
Well, what it is that there's two things you can talk about. One thing is that your quantum of energy starts spinning faster and faster until it gets to the next threshold. Now they're discrete. God's vibration is continuous, but our vibration is broken down because we are self-similar fractalized.
Right. Fractal aspects.
So the time that's a now moment, it's broken down into intervals, so we can call it time. And that is the quanta of energy are here, and then some of them go on anchor here, some of them go anchor here. They create different dimensions. Okay? Yeah, that's one form of dimensions. The other dimensions is that, so one has to do with the speed of rotation or the frequency of consciousness. The other thing is that you can be in the same thing. It's like have a bunch of discs or a bunch of spheres that are sitting in the same place, but the rotating axes are different. That's what gives you to the omni-earth. You have so many earth, in fact, actually infinite you can define. They're in the same place as they are, but they're in the different dimensions.
Different dimensional aspects of the earth. And we're sitting in the same spot that they are sitting.
Exactly.
All of them.
Exactly. So now the way that's worked out for humans is that we can have up to 144 pieces. 12 of them are in the harmonic universe 1, okay?
Yeah.
Actually, 12 is in the harmonic universe 2, and those each 12 is divided into 12 sections. Okay, so that makes 144. So there are 144 in HU1, harmonic universe 1, and then when 12 of them come together, they make one soul aspect, and they jump into harmonic universe 2, and then there's 12 of them now instead of 144. And when they those refine their vibrations and synchronize, they become 2. One become conjugate aspect of each other, conjugate and mirror aspect of it. And when those 2 marry, get together, becomes 1, and that's then the avatar. And that goes right in the neural network of God. You become part of God.
That's right. It goes to 0 point. Once it becomes those aspects unite, and they become dimensional equals. Whoa.
Yeah, I think we've got it all sorted out. It took me 10 years, but you know,
it's amazing to know it. No, it's amazing to just to contemplate that, you know, that we're such an amazing potential. We have such amazing potential that all we have to do is become aware of it and integrate it into who we are. Just think if we had every child start out with mathematics in grade school instead of the rote education that they give us to keep us from knowing this stuff, where would we be? That's where my mind goes when I talk about this stuff, is that we can just could have completely just come to this, okay, this great understanding of who we are, rather than putting it all. Obviously, we are still working on clearing out the goo and the separation from the divine, clearly, but just think where we would be if they started us out with math and science. There would be no holding us back.
Well, once you get that crystallinity back,
yeah,
you start developing, your consciousness expands correctly. There are no frequency fences, there's no genetic implants, there's no mutation, there's no controlling, there's no all this stuff. So you develop in a natural way. That's what God created.
Exactly.
These negative aliens were a virus. They attacked. They went anti-God, anti-creational, anti-life. They fell from the grace of God because God has fail-safe mechanisms.
Right, exactly.
Ordered cosmos, and they defied it. They defied the law of one. They defied all kinds of stuff. So God said, okay, no free energy for you. You know what I'm saying?
We're cutting you off. I'm cutting you off.
Yeah, well, actually, they cut even themselves off, because what happened, God, and or through liaisons of God, which is like guardian founders are in the 12th dimension, this our universe, they told them, and guardian founders have done that so many times, try to rehabilitate them to get rid of the genetic digression so they go back into God's world. They go to the divine organic consciousness.
Exactly.
And now they are so thirsty, they're so hungry for it, they can taste it, but they want to take it with force. They don't want to go to God and repent and accept, because, by the way, they go there, they have to accept that they're equal to everybody else.
Yep.
They have to start from zero.
Zero point. Not from the beginning.
They have to start from, step one. They have to stop and develop just like everybody else. Now they've gone there, they've destroyed the 12, all these stargates and everything else, and they're sitting there and they're playing God. They don't want to give that up either, But they're parasites. They have to feed on you. What kind of living?
Exactly. That's all. The thing is that whether they agree with us or not, they have to return to 0 point. Whether they want to or not, they will have to return to 0 point, but in a different. They're not going to get. In other words, they could have gone so much further if they had removed the separation between themselves and God. They could. We still have that potential, because that was taken from us. We didn't get that opportunity to fulfill our purpose naturally. And so thank God for, I'm honestly, I'm grateful that I would hate to be in a reptilian or, you know, the negative aliens
You couldn't
state.
be. It is not in your, it's not in your gene. You have to really, really totally get reversed and become an AI and, you know, disconnected. Because what they're saying is that we're not going to abide by law of one. We are not going to repent. We are anti-God. God doesn't exist. We are the gods. You know what I'm saying? And
Right, right,
what we're going to do, energy exists out there, which they don't understand that that's God's energy.
right.
And then they say, we're going to steal it from all these other people in there. And these people are unworthy. They're stupid. We have AI technology. We have weaponry. We have stealth technology. We've got all these things. And then we can prey on them. They're so stupid. They don't understand that if we go, there is no Nebadan universe.
Mm-mm.
They're done.
How could they be? Well, clearly they have their work cut out for them, like you said. And then, like, I remember you discussed in one of the documents that it doesn't matter what choice they make, they're still going to return to source. It doesn't matter. They have to return to source. They're not going to return in the fullness of being or with their full development, because they've taken and they've stolen and they've disconnected things, thinking that they could do better than the creator that made them. So it's just, I get, is it wrong for me to feel a little empathy for what they're gonna end up doing to themselves? I just have a little, I feel a little empathy for them, and I can't help that. But
you should not feel empathy for them. You should just you should be non-judgmental, and
right,
you should concentrate on your own development and getting out of this problem and all this,
right,
and they're being taken care of. But the key thing, I've thought about this a lot, and I've been in meditation, in commune, and with God and all this stuff, and said, how is that? The point is that they don't realize that God exists. If you talk to one of these reptilian negative aliens, one of the soldiers, one of the super soldiers, whatever, they're gonna tell you everything in the cosmos is random. The fact, it's, well, how can an organic person come in? It's just they talk about Goldilocks, and all this stuff. Like, it is random, and it just happens to come and be like this. It is like the what do they call it? The freak of nature. Except they don't call it nature. They don't even
accidental. Everything is accidental or not. There's no purpose. There's no synchronicity. There's no alignment, because they're out of alignment. They're completely.
These people have to be told one thing right on the top, and that is there is all this cosmos. Cosmos, I'm not talking universe. I'm talking about billions and billions of universes, multi-universes, galaxies.
Billions and billions of universes. I mean,
the entire cosmos is one, is God. That's the body of God. Right now, you're sitting there, I'm sitting in there. We're all in the body of God.
Yep.
Except what it is just, it's not even as it looks, because everything's holographic. You see what I'm saying?
Right. We have we're projections of consciousness. We're not this is part of who we are. We're representations of something, of God.
Reality doesn't matter. It's the experience of it, right?
Right.
And that's not artificial intelligence. We have tangible quanta of energy, comes from God. It is not artificial intelligence. It's not just information or anything like this. It's real.
Right. It's organic, but it's organic. It's not artificial.
It is there. It exists. But anyway, what these guys don't understand is that they live in the cosmos, and this is God's world. One way or another, whether you're a virus or you're a good bacteria, or you're a good, if you're constructive or destructive, you still live within the same system. You are nothing by yourself. None of us do anything by ourselves. You know what I'm saying?
Right, because you didn't originally create it. Those entities did not originally create who they are.
No.
They weren't, they were part of the, like you said, they're part of that fractalization of the divine. And they decided to, once they got a little power, and they decided to, okay, we have an advantage here. But they forgot where they came from.
They went rotten. Have you seen things go rotten
They went rotten. Yeah, and they never. It's like the organic things do decay, but you have to basically. We're just husks of this reality. They're not realizing that they have to return to source, even if they disagree with where they came from. Once they start, separating out and not gaining that energy back from source to return back into reality in some kind of state, they can do nothing on their own. They're lost, but their energy still goes back to source.
Well, they steal the energy from the source and they use it. They create it, and Anyway, my dear, I think we should stop here. We've had a very, very long session.
It was long, but I'm glad that we did it. I hope more.
1.5 hours about what would be one of these papers with extensive discussion and stuff. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. And
I did. I'm gonna dig in more on my own, and hopefully maybe do one a week or something like that.
Yeah, what you need to do there is that you need to change your computer, because the picture is very, very bad. And also, which is not as important, the sound disconnects in the middle.
Yeah, I'll either get a dedicated camera, or I'll figure it out. I have a couple of ideas, but yeah, I had a feeling it wasn't going to be as with what I'm using, because this computer does not have the like you said, I've used it before for other things, and it's the same thing. It's not the best computer. It's not the best camera. So yeah, I'm going to be working on that.
I think your computer does not have enough memory, and the CPU and all this stuff. You got to upgrade that, because it can't process the pictures and the sound. That's part of it. Okay. Then the second thing comes to the quality of the sound and the quality of the video that comes in. The best solution is to get a new computer, which is pretty much, it's okay. It's more than adequate. But if you really want to even top that, you would get a camera, connect to the camera, and also get the microphone, which I didn't use my microphone. And that way, everything's crystal clear. It becomes really good and professional. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I knew that the computer that I'm using is not the best computer for this, period. I was just going to use this to read from it. But my tablet is also, I definitely will. I have a couple of ideas. I know what I'm going to do, but definitely thank you for the opportunity to let me read this chapter.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for doing this. You did a good service to everybody. And I'm sure they're going to be grateful to you. And I'm going to, pretty much probably put this up tomorrow, day after tomorrow, so you can see it yourself and see how it turned out to be. But it was very good. Okay. This is what we wanted.
I enjoyed it. I'm glad, because I've been meaning to read your papers and I haven't done it. So now this is the first one of your papers I've read, and it's making me want to read everything again myself, just to dig in.
One you've ever read?
I always go, I'm gonna sit here and read, and something happens. No, because now you're forcing me to read your papers, because I have to sit here and read it.
It's absolutely all part of service. I don't get anything.
Whatever it takes to get me to get
doing this, I could have been writing a paper,
I know.
So
I know. So I might just,
All about
like I said,
service. Writing a paper, all this stuff doesn't matter if it doesn't help people, if it doesn't, but you're not providing service, you know? So I thought,
it's so important. I think it's important that we do this work. I mean, this is really, this is where our focus should be as a human race, you know, is to get to this spiritual understanding so we can, you know, really, we have a lot of problems here. We're in a disintegration state, you know, as a race. And it's like, okay, so we have some power here. What are we going to do with it? So this is what I think we should be doing with it, you
great.
know?
So anyway, if you want to come back, I suggest you pick up your paper of interest. You know what I'm saying? Read it a couple of times, and if you get your equipment set and all this stuff, we can do this, and that's fine. This is.
Okay.
I want to archive these things back there so people can go back to it and listen to it. There are a lot of people who are dyslexic. There are people who have vision problems, and there's tremendous number of people who don't want to read. Like, you know, time they don't, you know, they don't. They're not used.
I can relate to that.
You're better. I mean, there's some people that they just don't read. I have tried so hard, you know, to give you long abstracts.
Yep. Yep.
Yes, I have tried to I've tried to even trick you for you to learn. You know what I'm saying? And you know, and the point is that write it, and it's up to them, and that's the bottom line. But I've tried to help people as much as I can with all
I
these.
mean, you helped me tremendously. It helps. It everything that you write resonates with me. I wish I had more of a scientific background so I can like go, oh yeah, I understand. The math and the science is a little beyond me, but the other parts that are so powerful are things that I have thought myself, that I synced with. That, you know how you feel like you're in sync with what the person is saying. I feel like I'm in sync with what you're expressing to me, even if I don't have a clear math science background. I have that synchronicity, that idea of expansion that you talk about. I'm always on this concept of expansion and the spiraling. As an artist, I'm doing a lot of exploration on geometrics and stuff, that it's synced with me, what you wrote about creation and about God and about this interruption we've had with this species that has a little control over us, and they think they have some kind of dominating influence on us, but we know it's false, but we don't know how to get past it. That's where my mind.
Past it, and we have.
I know we have the Guardian founders. I know. Thank God for them. You know, that they're like, somebody was watching and keeping an eye out for us. Thank God for that. So yeah, but we're getting on track. I'm thoroughly. I think it's important for us to be, you know, supportive of our progress, and get more people involved in knowing that this is what's happening, because a lot of people are still stuck in their religious, you know, savior process, you know, these fake religions and the fake God constructs that are not true. They're not real. They're just a way of dominating the species and tamping us down from knowing what we need to know to get beyond this.
And there's a lot to be said about that. Okay, dear. So
okay.
When you see with the recording, when it's released.
Yeah. I already know it's not going to be the way I want it to look.
No, it's
but
a fine job.
I'm going to work on it.
Is always getting better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the good thing is that when you watch yourself, you know what you don't want to do next time. Like,
yeah,
sound that got cut off. I could have done this. I could have. This is the first thing. It was very good for the first time. Anyway,
yeah. Thanks, Doctor. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. After 7 years or whatever, at least 7, 8 years, we actually got to know each other, you know, on a more one-to-one person. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for making this happen. Thank you so much. I'll be in touch. I'm going to keep reading, of course, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, dear. Okay.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.